September 8th, preparing Aubrey. On Friday, September 8th, Taylor and I went to the funeral home. We had been given the privilege of getting Aubrey ready for her funeral, her last appearance. And as hard as that was for us, I was determined to be there for my baby every single second. She was, after all, only 13 years old. And the thought of her being exposed in front of strangers or someone else brushing her hair one last time made me come undone. It felt both unbearable and sacred. One last chance to care for her, to mother her. Aubrey had left her Spotify logged in on my phone. A small treasure. So when we entered the quiet room where her body lay, I turned on her playlist. Her music filled the air. Her spirit was instantly there with us. And I could see her dancing to her favorite Megan Maroney songs. It was surreal. I didn't want that moment to be full of dread and something I'd look back on with nothing but sorrow in my heart. I don't know if that was my way of coping with the unimaginable or my undying love for my daughter. The funeral home's makeup artist stayed close by, never, doubting whether we could manage. She watched our every step. I didn't bother asking her if other clients brought in music or insisted on being with the deceased every step of the way. Her answer wouldn't have mattered or changed my mind. She was wonderful, patient, kind, and understanding. She offered gentle guidance, explaining what could and couldn't be done. I respected her process and listened carefully as she described the limits to working with Aubrey's skin when it came to makeup. Everyday products wouldn't work. Things like foundation and mascara had to be replaced with a special kind that the funeral home provided. Still, she welcomed us to apply them ourselves using her products, letting us have that final act of care. We wanted so badly to use the mascara Aubrey always wore at home. She loved her eyelashes. They were her little piece of glamour. The makeup artist reminded us that only a particular type of black paint could be used on her lashes now. Regular mascara wasn't an option, I understood. We adjusted, determined to make her look as close to herself as possible. Taylor and I then applied her lipstick. The same one she wore at home, the one that still carried the shape of her smile. My hand trembled as I steadied it against her chin, lining her lips with care. Her skin was so cold beneath my fingers, and I was careful not to smudge the makeup already in place. As we worked, her music played softly from my phone, filling the quiet room. Between songs, tears fell, but there were also moments of laughter. Taylor and I told stories about Aubrey, her sass, her humor, the sparkle she carried everywhere she went. We cried and we laughed, holding on to every little detail of who she was as we gave her this final gift of love. Then came her hair. Curling Aubrey's hair was one of the greatest honors of my life, though it tore me in half at the same time. I stood over her, curling each section slowly, memorizing the way it felt between my fingers, the way the strands framed her face. I found myself studying her all over again. The curve of her eyelashes, the arch of her brows, the delicate shape of her ears. I traced the outline of her jaw, the way her hands rested so still. Little things I had seen 1,000 times but wanted to etch into memory now, one last time. I studied her freckles, her lips, the gentle slope of her nose, the outline of her jaw. I was trying to burn every single detail into my memory because I knew this was the last time. Every curl I finished felt like a prayer, a silent promise that I would carry her with me. It was unbearable, and yet it was sacred. The final act of mothering I could give her. Finally, it was time to dress her. Taylor stepped out, and I understood. This was so much for her, and I didn't want her to carry more than she already had. But for me, there was no question. This was my child. This was my task, my responsibility, my sacred duty as her mother. I was the one who brought her into this world, who clothed her for the first time. And I would be the one to clothe her for the last. That day I learned something. When you dress someone who has passed, you don't put clothes on them as you normally would. The back of the outfit is cut open, and you gently slide their arms through, tucking the fabric around them. I ensured we went very slowly, concentrating on every movement and being careful, respectful, and soft. We dressed Aubrey in her white dress, the same one she wore to the Megan Maroney concert just months before, laughing and dancing. Seeing her in it again was both unbearable and beautiful. Once she was ready, I called Taylor back in. Together, we listened to a few more songs, held her hand, and whispered our love. We knew it was the last time we would ever do this for her. I lay my head next to hers and pressed my lips against her head. My baby girl. I couldn't believe she was gone. Eventually, it was time to leave her. I knew I'd be back the next day, but leaving her wasn't easy. At that point, every step I took was painful, and every breath I drew in felt like betrayal. I was still living, and my girl was not. I couldn't protect her and keep her safe from the evil in this world. And even though Aubrey was lying dead at a funeral home, those girls who made her question her own worth still wouldn't leave her alone. That night, Taylor learned that one of those girls had written something on Aubrey's obituary page. Taylor wasted no time at all. Taylor Wyatt, thank you for remembering her, but don't be all LL now that she's gone. All right, look, I'm sorry for whatever, and I'll stop posting about your sister. I'm sorry you think I'm doing it for attention, but I'm really not. I genuinely care, and maybe you think it's only because she's dead, but if I knew what she was going through, I would have been there for her and never would have said anything. So for you and your family, I'll stop posting and I won't go to her funeral or anything. September 9th, one last visit the next day, Saturday, September 9th. The funeral home gave us something they rarely offer: private time as a family. They explained that family moments always feel rushed on the day of a funeral. So they let us come in, just us, for a few hours. It wasn't the first time I saw the casket or her, but it was the first time I saw her in the casket. It was me, Taylor, Riker, my brother, her uncle, and Jeff. We stepped quietly into the room while Nick waited outside to allow us our time. And we gathered around her, doing the things families do when words run out. We held her hands, we kissed her forehead, we stroked her arms. We sat together into stillness, drawing close to her the way you would at a wake, only this time, it was just for us. Riker was restless in the way only a 6-year-old can be, moving between sitting for a moment and then springing back up to touch her hand or lean down and kiss her cheek again. Over and over he returned, giving her gentle kisses. I couldn't stop him, and I didn't want to. It was his way of loving her, of saying goodbye. All I could do was hold him, hold her, and let the tears come. My little family together in one impossible moment. The funeral home staff had learned how much Aubrey loved Megan Maroney. And as we stood there, a speaker in the corner began to play Tennessee Orange. The first notes filled the room and we all broke down. It was the sweetest gift, hearing her favorite song surround her one last time. For a few minutes, it felt like she was right there with us, smiling, singing along under her breath. When it was finally time to leave, we walked out into the hallway and stopped in our tracks. The funeral home had brought in all the tributes that had been laid at the middle school: flowers upon flowers, posters covered in messages, stuffed animals, teddy bears, an outpouring of love transferred into one beautiful display. It was overwhelming in the best way. Every color, every note, every gesture whispered how deeply Aubrey had been loved. We stood there together, taking it in, breathing in the fragrance of plants and flowers, letting the sight soak into our hearts. It was beautiful, painful, but beautiful. And then, with heavy steps, we turned to leave, carrying both the weight of our grief and the quiet comfort of having had that sacred time with her. Heather Wyatt, if I had known it would be the last time you came in my room to borrow my lipstick or perfume, ... If I had known it would be the last time you asked me to buy you even more Lulu clothes, ... If I had known it would be the last time we ate dinner together as a family of 4, ... If I had known it would be the last time I hugged you, ... If I had known it would be the last time to kiss your sweet face, if I had known it would be the last time I curled or braided your hair, if I had known it would be the last time hearing you say mama ... I would have cherished every little thing even more, held you in my embrace a little longer, squeezed you tighter, showered your sweet face with kisses, gifted you all the Lulu in the world, and never, ever let you slip away. My girl, my girl, my girl, I miss you, I need you. September 10th, the funeral. Sunday, September 10th, was her funeral. It felt like years had passed since she died, but really, it was only a week. In that time, so much happened, and every day seemed to stretch on endlessly. And every time I left the funeral home, I knew I'd be back another day to see her. I didn't sleep much that week. Maybe a few minutes here and there. My body was trapped in chaos, fight, flight, freeze, alert, stress. Whenever I got into a sleep state, my nervous system ripped me back into reality. The night before her funeral was no different, except for the crushing awareness that the next day would be the last time I would physically see her. I saw the sun crack through my bedroom blinds that morning. I rolled onto my side and clenched my chest and my belly and sobbed into my mattress. No sound, just gut-wrenching, convulsing. When that passed, I went into autopilot mode. I splashed water on my face, made coffee, and got Riker and Taylor up, but she was already moving around her room. The funeral wasn't until noon, but I couldn't stand being in the house knowing Aubrey was being moved. So we all got ready for the funeral. Aubrey's funeral was held right after the church's morning service, which meant we couldn't arrive until after the service was over and everyone had left. I knew how long it would take us to drive across town, and the kids were ready with plenty of time. The drive across town was short, and the kids were ready well ahead of schedule. When we pulled into the church lot, I saw the funeral home vehicle parked quietly in the back. We parked beside it, then walked together to the side entrance of the church. The entrance they guided us through led to a side room, not the main space, but a smaller one just off to the church hall. There were tables set up with water and refreshments, the kind of quiet hospitality churches are known for. On the wall, a PowerPoint slideshow of Aubrey was already playing. Picture after picture of her life glowing across the screen. I walked in first and immediately broke down. I wanted to be strong for Aubrey, but I needed a moment to feel everything. I wanted to be strong for her, but before I could step into the sanctuary itself, I needed that moment to feel everything. I knew her casket was waiting at the front of the sanctuary, but I hadn't seen it yet. For a few minutes, it was just the space, the side room, the looping images of her smile, the reminder of her life, holding me until I was steady enough to walk toward her. After a few minutes, I was ready. From the doorway, the view stretched long and narrow, pews lined neatly on either side, just like any church sanctuary. Only this time, at the far end, my baby girl lay in her casket. I could see her even from the opening, framed by flowers and soft light. The space was perfect, almost too perfect. Pink touched every corner. Floral arrangements in the shape of four-leaf clovers, little details woven in that reflected who she was. Taylor and Riker were on either side of me as we stepped forward. None of us spoke. The only sound was our footsteps against the aisle. It was just me and my two surviving children, moving toward their sister. A mother, a daughter, and a son, walking together into the hardest goodbye of our lives. I felt Taylor close in beside me, steady but trembling, holding herself together with every ounce of strength. On my other side, Riker clutched my hand tight, small, and restless. His eyes darting from the flowers to the casket, trying to make sense of something too big for him to understand. Soon after, we were joined by my brother, Nick, Cassie, and other family members. We gathered around, looking down at her, knowing these were our last earthly glimpses. We spent about 30 minutes with her alone before I was told the off-duty police officers I had hired had arrived to stand as guards. Thankfully, the funeral home director met with them to discuss my instructions that cell phones and photography were prohibited inside her funeral. I emailed pictures of the handful of girls and parents who were forbidden from entering her funeral. Signs were posted on the church windows, letting guests know they couldn't bring their phones or cameras in. This wasn't to be documented or shared, and there was no way on God's green earth I was going to allow those girls to make a mockery out of that day, or my baby during the last time I'd see her beautiful face. I glanced up at Jeff O'Keefe as he walked away from the security guards and gave a nod. I assumed that meant my wishes were going to be carried out, and I didn't have to worry that the girls who bullied my daughter were going to be sitting in front of me as I said goodbye to her. People arrived shortly after the security guards took their spots at the church entrance. I saw them point to the signs in the windows a few times, and folks returning to their cars. I imagined the guards were instructing people to place their phones back in their cars. When the service began, the three of us, me, Taylor, and Riker, stood at the front beside her. Then came the people, one after another. Friend after friend, family after family. The line stretched endlessly. Hundreds of people, hug after hug after hug. My heart was grateful, but I was also numb, dissociating just to make it through. Riker tried so hard to stay with us, but after a while the weight was too much for his little body. He leaned against Taylor's side, his head heavy, his small frame worn out from the emotional toll. He was only 6. He had been so strong, but he was exhausted, mentally, physically, emotionally. I knelt and whispered to him, "It's okay, buddy. You can sit for a while." He nodded, and we let him go rest on one of the front pews, where he could still see us. That left just Taylor and me standing there, side by side, holding each other up as much as we held on to Aubrey. 2 broken pieces of the same heart, doing all we could to stay upright in front of her. The line of visitors continued to come through. Friends, family, teachers, neighbors, each one pausing at the casket, each one offering a hug or a kind word before moving on to their seat. Eventually, the sanctuary grew quiet again as everyone settled into the pews. It was nearly time for the service to begin. That was when Jeff O'Keefe came to me. He asked gently if I wanted to step out for what came next, just for a moment, that it was time to close the casket. I shook my head. No, I'll be here for every single thing. So I made my way to the front pew, with Taylor and Riker on either side of me. As I sat down, my eyes never left her. I watched the funeral home staff, the men whose job it was to tend to these final details, step forward, their hands moving to prepare. And then, with the sanctuary hushed and everyone seated, they closed the top of her casket. That heavy clank of the lid shutting into place, the finality of it split through me. I ran to her and screamed, collapsing over the casket. The kind of scream that comes from the deepest part of your soul. Blood-curdling screams ripped from somewhere inside me that I didn't know existed. Several people, including Taylor, Nick, and my brother Jeff, all came up behind me, wrapping their arms around me, steadying me, trying to pull me from the casket. They guided me gently toward the side hall, holding me up as I broke apart, as I collapsed to the floor, balled up and crying. Prayers rose up over me, voices mingling through my cries. Hands rested on my shoulders, my back, my arms. A cocoon of strength when mine was gone. I don't know how long I stayed there, only that the world felt suspended. Sound and light blurring until at last I could breathe again, if only for a moment. When I finally regained enough composure to stand, I walked back in. The service continued. One voice after another rose to honor her, words of love, stories of her light. I spoke. Taylor spoke. Taylor's dear friend Maddie, who had been like an additional sister, spoke. My brother spoke. Even her kindergarten teacher stood and shared. Each voice cracked and trembled, but each one carried her name with reverence. People sang, people wept. Together, it was both unbearable and beautiful. And then the time came. The pallbearers moved to the front, lifting her gently, carrying her down the aisle. We followed as they walked her out of the church and placed her in the waiting hearse. The doors shut, and we began the procession. Vehicle after vehicle fell in line, headlights stretching behind us like a river of grief and love. I sat in the car and stared straight ahead at the one in front of me, the one carrying my baby. I could not look away for the entire 45-minute drive. When we arrived at her resting place, the crowd gathered around quietly. The graveside service itself was brief. A few words, a prayer, and silence that felt heavier than any sermon. After the prayer, one by one, people drifted away. Doors closed, engines started, and cars pulled down the narrow cemetery road until the crowd was gone. For most, that was the natural end of the day. Their goodbye was said, but not mine. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I stayed by her side, unwilling to turn my back on her resting place. Even as the cemetery grew quieter and the crowd thinned to nothing, and as they started to lower her into the ground, one by one, people left. Jeff asked if I wanted to leave too. The funeral staff came to me gently and asked if I was ready to leave, that I did not have to stay for the next part. No, I said, I'm not leaving her. So I stayed. With Taylor and Riker by my side, close friends and family that had stayed off to the back to be there if we needed them, while the work began. I watched as the men stepped forward and turned the crank that lowered her casket. Slowly down into the vault, already waiting in the earth, the chains creaked, The wheel turned, and I held my breath with every inch of descent. My eyes never left her. I wanted to see her through every last moment. When her casket was finally settled into place, the men lifted a heavy cement vault cover and positioned it above her. They lowered it carefully until it rested over the casket, sealing it away. That sound, the thud of cement against stone, vibrated through my chest. And then came the dirt. Shovel after shovel, scoops of earth hitting the vault. Each one echoed like it was striking my own body, my own heart. The sound was sharp, final, merciless. Still, I stood there, refusing to turn away. We watched until she was fully covered, until there was nothing left to see but earth. I wanted to be there for every second, for every step, for every sound. It was my duty as her mother to witness it, to stay, to not leave her alone. And then it was over. The last shovel of dirt was placed, the sound faded, and there was nothing left for me to do but stand there in disbelief. The cemetery grew quiet, and at some point, I knew we had to leave. We walked back to the car in silence. My legs moved, but they felt heavy, like they didn't belong to me. Nick opened the door and drove us away, but my soul stayed behind, clinging to the ground where she now lay. My body moved, but my soul didn't want to, because now the impossible had happened. I didn't just find my daughter hanging, already gone. I watched her be laid to rest in the earth, where I couldn't go. I couldn't see her, and I had to somehow go on with my life without her. I was expected to survive without her, without my baby, without the girl I made, raised, and loved with every breath. I had to keep living, and right then, that day, I didn't want to. I wondered if I ever would. I knew I had to for Taylor and Riker. After September 10th, the days became a blur. Honestly, the weeks did too. I was alive, I was breathing, but I wasn't really living. I was just existing. I had to send Riker off to school like everything was normal, even though nothing would ever be normal again. Taylor stayed home longer, taking the time she desperately needed. But how could anyone just return to life as if it hadn't shattered? At night, none of us could bear to be alone. I dragged a mattress into the living room, and every night we slept there together. We were too scared, too broken, too lonely to retreat to our separate rooms. Nightmares, scary, demonic faces haunted Taylor's nights. She couldn't escape. Riker's tears soaked his pillow as reality finally began to sink in. Permanent. This wasn't a movie where someone comes back at the end. His sister wasn't coming back. How do you explain forever to a 6-year-old? My brain couldn't even grasp forever. So I lay there every night between my children, praying with them, holding them, begging God for strength. The days crawled forward, and eventually Taylor went back to school. It was brutal. Her anxiety spiked, and panic attacks followed her down every hallway. She felt like everyone's eyes were on her, whispering, staring. I stayed home. I couldn't yet return to work. I hid inside my house, whispering to myself, "This isn't my life. Please, God, let this not be my life." And when my mind went to a really dark place, it wasn't just grief I felt. It was the ache of remembering what had been done to her. My thoughts circled back to the bullying, to the cruelty she endured at the hands of girls who should have been her friends. I never called them by name publicly, and I still can't legally name them to this day. But the truth is, I don't have to. They know what they did. Their parents know what they did. And in a small town like ours, where nothing stays hidden for long, everyone knows. This wasn't just me feeling rage. This was me staring into the reality of what had pushed my daughter into such a dark place. The relentless cruelty, the years of it, the way it followed her, seeped into her identity, convinced her she was unworthy of love, of life. It is impossible for me to think of losing her without also thinking of what she carried, what was done to her, and how those wounds shaped her final moments. Heather Wyatt, Aubrey Wyatt, plastered her name everywhere. Allow her the honor of being the face and name to stop bullying, to help others that feel like she felt. WordsHurt.com. Words make people feel worthless. She didn't deserve this. Heather Wyatt, my heart. The homecoming parade was amazing. They dedicated a float to my girl, and my baby boy got to ride in it. He loved it. I'm so grateful to everyone. Heather Wyatt, my baby deserved more. She deserved better. A life gone too soon raise awareness. Teach your kids, just be kind, talk to your kids, don't be passive. You are your child's advocate. Do not tolerate any form of bullying.